When Sarah and Mark moved into the old farmhouse, they thought it was a dream come true. The property was secluded, surrounded by dense woods, and the price was too good to pass up. But on their first night, they heard it, a faint, almost imperceptible whisper coming from the walls. At first, they dismissed it as the wind or the creaking of an old house. But the whispers grew louder, more distinct, and impossible to ignore. One night, Sarah woke up to the sound of her name being called. She followed the voice to the living room, where she found Mark staring at the wall, his ear pressed against it. "Do you hear that?" he asked. It's like it's trying to tell us something." The next day, they decided to investigate. In the basement, they found a hidden compartment behind a loose brick. Inside were dozens of diaries, each written by a different person. The entries all described the same phenomenon: the whispers, the feeling of being watched, and the growing sense of dread. The last entry in each diary always ended abruptly, as if the writer had vanished mid-sentence. As the days passed, the whispers became more insistent. They started to hear their own voices repeating things they had said days or even weeks ago. One night, Mark woke up to find Sarah standing in the corner of the room, her face pressed against the wall. "It's in here," she said, her voice hollow. "It's hungry." Mark tried to pull her away, but the wall seemed to grip her, pulling her in. He watched in horror as the plaster began to ripple like water, swallowing her whole. Desperate, he grabbed a sledgehammer and started smashing the wall. But instead of wood and plaster, he found something else. A pulsing, fleshy mass that seemed to breathe. And then he heard it, not just in the walls, but in his mind. "Join us." The last diary entry was written in Mark's handwriting. "The walls are alive. They're always hungry, and now they have me too."
The shadow in the photograph. Emma was an amateur photographer who loved exploring abandoned places. When she heard about the old asylum on the outskirts of town, she couldn't resist. The building was eerie, with peeling paint and broken windows, but it was perfect for her project. She spent hours inside, capturing every crumbling hallway and rusted bed frame. When she developed the photos, she noticed something strange. In every picture, there was a shadowy figure in the background. At first, she thought it was a trick of the light, but the figure was in every shot, even ones where she was sure no one had been there. The figure was always slightly out of focus, its features indistinct, but it seemed to be watching her. Emma tried to brush it off, but the figure began to appear in her other photos. Pictures taken at home, at work, even in broad daylight. She started to feel like she was being followed, but every time she turned around, there was nothing there. Then, one night, she woke up to the sound of footsteps in her apartment. She grabbed her camera and snapped a photo in the dark. When she looked at the screen, she saw the figure standing at the foot of her bed, its face inches from hers. The next day, Emma decided to confront whatever was haunting her. She went back to the asylum, camera in hand. As she walked through the halls, she felt a cold presence behind her. She turned and snapped a photo. The figure was closer than ever, its features now clear, a twisted, grotesque version of her own face. Before she could react, the figure lunged at her. The last thing Emma saw was the flash of her own camera. When her body was found weeks later, the camera was still clutched in her hands.